All right, good morning, good late morning to all of us. I think we'll get started now. I know you're all having fun. Yeah, I don't know how many of you were in Elizabeth Joyner's session yesterday, and she was going around the room and doing all kinds of, I'm not Elizabeth Joyner, so I don't feel like rallying the whole group. So I'm glad you got some good conversations going. I hate to interrupt them. My name is Deborah Smith. I'm here. Where'd you go? Sarah Lubkin. And the two of us have been putting on several sessions now here at ESIP, sharing our findings on the Airborne and Field Data Workshop that was part of NASA in 2022, and then also talking about the next steps of what we're doing. And so we're bringing to you the next steps today. We always have a very active session. Please beware, you will be getting out of your seats. We both agree that, you know, making the blood flow and moving around and talking to others is the way we get the best information and the best interaction. So I'd like to also thank Megan, who's not here, and Bruce, who's standing in for Michelle. They also have both been very helpful in making sure we get this session going and get some really valuable information from it. So our session is titled Opening the Door to Airborne and Field Data Information. And we really feel that, especially, first of all, I'd like to ask, how many in the room are not NASA related in some way? Yeah. Okay, this is good to know. We're speaking to ourselves, so I don't have to explain things too much. Hopefully you're aware of some of the work, and the most important part to remember in all of this is that for a long time now, NASA's satellite is what's well known. NASA's other data is not as well known. As some of you may have heard me say over the years, you know, Airborne and Field is kind of the stepchild of NASA. We don't get a lot of good care and stewardship historically, and what the Airborne Data Management Group does is to make that better. And I'll go into that in these slides. So the session outline is a brief introduction, then outcomes of the March 2022 workshop. If you've heard them before, I apologize. This is just to refresh everyone as to what we found in that workshop and what we did in previous sessions to get us here today. What is a resource center will be asked. We want to brainstorm so everybody's on the same page as far as understanding the same kinds of things. And then we're going to do an activity around the resource center that we're building, and then talk about the next steps and the future outcomes. Today's speakers, we have two. Stephanie Wingo is here. She leads the Airborne Data Management Group now. Some of you know I was leading it for several years. I am no longer. I've been tasked with other work. And so Stephanie's taken over, and it's in great competent hands. She'll be talking about Casey and our development of the inventory that we've been doing. And then Andy Thomas is here to talk about web unification in NASA and how that impacted what we wanted to bring here today. So we did our best to bring you our progress, and we are looking for feedback. So I'm going to start out, for those of you who may not know, that the 2016 Satellite Needs Working Group Survey was the first of this type, and it was a survey asking for what do other agencies need of NASA in order to do more. And the feedback from agencies identified a real need for better access to and support of NASA's airborne and field data. They said it was very difficult to find, it was difficult to use, and if they did find it, and that needed to change. Satellite data was better cared for. The result was the creation of the Airborne Data Management Group under Kevin Murphy. He placed it in Impact, which is a kind of a forward-thinking research group at NASA Marshall. And Stephanie Wingo now leads it, as I mentioned. The purpose is shown in the diagram here, and I have to switch glasses. I'm sorry, I'm old. We work primarily with NASA DACs, airborne scientists who may be researchers, but also data producers. And we also take an inventory that we call Casey. So all this work happens in collaboration and together, and that's why we're here today as not only not leading this, but representing one part of the type of work we do collectively. So I'm going to bring up Stephanie Wingo now to talk about the work that ADMG does, just so you all know, and to talk about where we're at with Casey, which was just released very excitingly this month. So come on up, Stephanie. Can you switch these? Thank you. I don't want to touch technology right now. No, screw that.
Oh, you can try. There you go. Hi y'all. Hi again. Okay. I was up here like just in the previous session, so it's like familiar territory. All right. So Casey. So what's Casey mean? It's one massive part of what ADMG does, but as Deborah alluded to, we do a lot of other things as well. So it's our catalog of archived suborbital Earth science investigations, or these airborne and field campaigns. And I'm going to try to give you a good overview of what it is. So we're very excited. We've actually had it. It's existed for a while. We had our sort of beta release a couple of years ago. We were excited and vocal, but also kind of quiet about it because we didn't have a lot of the content curated yet. And you'll learn, I'll tell you a little more about that. But earlier this month, we did finally officially remove that beta sort of label. And we have a fully released iteration of Casey, so you can get there if you'd like. We'd like for you to. So again, most of you probably are somewhat familiar with this, but airborne and field data have a lot of unique things about them, especially relative to satellite observations. So not only are the kinds of things that they are targeting, like the kinds of science and the types of physical processes and natural phenomena, very different and across lots of different scales, but the sort of intricacies and idiosyncrasies of the data sets themselves have a lot of variability. So we say, heterogeneity abounds. That is a very common thing we say within ADMG about these data. And, one of those things is data formats. And another piece of what ADMG does is works to try to rescue some of these data that are not in digital formats for a number of reasons. But, NASA's been doing airborne and field work for 50 years. So that's a lot of observations that potentially at the time were not really properly stewarded in the way that we would, anticipate they'd be stewarded today. So this is another big component, but the whole thing is that's a responsibility that we have. We have publicly funded these data, so we must, make them available. We have to make them fair, and there's a lot of risks associated with not doing that. So how do we kind of create this inventory in response to that survey that Deborah mentioned from the satellite needs group? Well, so we're throwing all of this stuff into the box of the inventory, and the slide is familiar if you were in the earlier session. First step really is saying, like, what are these things? How do we define what we're talking about here, right? If like you're moving house, you want to have all your stuff in different boxes. Otherwise, you have like 5 rooms of things in one box, and that's not efficient at all. So the big challenge is with that, first start with language and like, how do we know what we're describing so that we're putting things that are like things in the same place so that it's organized for a user to come in and intuitively locate what they're looking for. So what are those sub boxes of this inventory? How do we put them together? And then obviously, how do we populate them? I spoke earlier today about this initial process. And one of the key things in that was we worked with the ESCO office, so as just standards coordination office, on putting together definitions that really fit into our data model. So really how we started this is we're like, okay, what are the pieces of a field campaign? And maybe we don't call it a campaign at first. Maybe we just call it some conceptual thing. And then we talk with our disciplined folks and kind of see what terminology they're using. So maybe we don't call it a field campaign. Maybe we call it like purple or duck or some terrible word that doesn't already have these really specific connotations with it to these communities. And so in doing that, we were able to put together the sort of conceptual model of what makes up a field campaign. And then we went back and we're like, okay, so what should we label these pieces? Like, what are the terms we should use for that? We had an early iteration of specific definitions for those things. We went through, as I mentioned, with the ESDIS standard coordinations office. After we got those definitions in good shape, we also formulated decision trees so that our curators are arriving at consistent and objective determinations. Another fun thing about field data is that there's a lot of subjectivity in some of what you might call something. And in order to put this into, again, consistent and intuitive way for users to come and find these observations, there have to be some, boxes in place. So this is just a look at what we did with ESCO on putting that together. If you're interested in that, I highly encourage you to kind of go there. We have the final report is available on the Earth Data site as well. We had a lot of input from the various stakeholders across, whether they're airborne science or within, specific user communities, discipline-oriented user communities, data producers, as well as the data stewardship roles include comments on here that we took into account in putting those definitions together. So what do we do with that, right? So we've got this data model, we've got all this stuff. How do we build the inventory based on that? And so what we do within ADMG is we have a team of human curators who are all awesome. And I wish they could all be here and you could meet them, because without them, Casey would just be this idea. And we go through a fairly extensive training process where we talk about SEMA, we talk about metadata, we talk about schemas, we talk about authoritative sources and how funding mechanisms are, because some of that is in our metadata. It's like who funded this campaign. We go through our decision trees and make sure that everyone understands these objective things. And they put together all of the metadata within Casey. They go through 3 people before anything is actually visible on the public facing side. So there's a lot of time required to do this curation. I won't spend, well, maybe I can spend a little time on this one. Casey itself lives, it lives in a few places, but the metadata in Casey are stored in a Postgres database that we have hosted on AWS in a relational database. And then the structure of that really supports that content approval process. So everything starts life as a draft, and the drafts in Casey can have various actions. They're either for creating something new in the database or updating something or deleting something. We don't actually do that much, but we can. And then they all are associated with the status, and that ties into that review process. So is it something that's new? Is it something that's in review? Is it something that's, almost ready for prime time? And is it something that's been published? And each of those things, once they're go through that review process, we publish them, and then the public can view those things. The structure of those metadata are stored in individual objects, and then they basically host or are stored as a table, object table. And then the fields within that are actually representing the individual metadata elements throughout that conceptual model and our more detailed data model. I guess I should have had all of this on there. Basically, the content that you see on the UI on the public facing site gets generated periodically, and essentially as images. They're kind of stored on the S3 side, and then we're viewing them at Casey. So even though we say new metadata can be published to the database, we do have to actually update the site before that's reflected. I can't just save it as published and then it goes there. A little bit more in the weeds, but this is the fuller structure of the data model. So it's a little bit more complicated than the simple bubbles that you saw earlier. And we do have a fully documented API that we recently moved into a read the docs format. So we're pretty excited to kind of move that along into something more familiar to tech folks to interact with. And I apologize, I don't have little movies. That probably would have made more sense, but I wasn't sure that the animated GIF would work. So I just have a few screenshots from some of the various pieces in Casey. And so the top left is looking at our, we call that our Explore page, where you can actually choose if you want to explore from the whole set of Casey's, the campaigns, platforms, instruments, and even a data product section. We do have landing pages for each of the campaigns, platforms, and instruments. And then within those, we have sections where you can explore kind of the relationships of those things. So if you're on a particular field campaign, in the middle at the top, you can see the platforms and instruments, how those were related and associated for that campaign. And then if you go to a platform, like at the top right on the ER2, you can look at, well, what campaigns have this platform been used in, and how were the instruments configured on that platform for that particular use. And then again, we also have on the bottom left and then in the bottom middle, those are further down on the campaign landing pages. We have sections where you can view data products that are associated with that campaign, which are filterable by, again, instruments and platforms. And then we have a section on timelines where we're able to show particular parts of that campaign, as well as really critical contextual metadata for significant events that really helps users focus on a key time period. Campaign might be several weeks, months, years of an effort. And then you come here looking for one day of data, and you're like, where do I start? So that section is where we are able to help guide the users to a more efficient way to start looking at those particular data. And then the bottom right is our one of our newest parts that we've added, and that's the data products explore section. So you can filter through all kinds of things, including variable types, also vertical measurement regions, geography types, geophysical concepts, season, all kinds of things. And so what is going on? Okay, I think I accidentally animated that. Didn't mean to do that. Right now, we have about 65, it's actually right at 65% of known field campaigns. So saying known campaigns implies something, right? So remember that data rescue I was talking about? Yeah, so there's a number of reasons why the known campaigns actually is a moving target, right? So not only do we have the ongoing and future field campaigns, so we know that that's going to increase the number of NASA's field campaigns, but we also are finding these ones, or they're finding us, that need proper stewardship, and then obviously we want to include those in Casey as well. So right now we're at these are the numbers: campaigns, platforms, and instruments, and we've got this. Yeah, so these contextual details and all of this. So previously, what had been multi points of starting for a user and is very disparate and super time consuming to locate all of this stuff. Now they can come and start at Casey and do all of these things in one place. And that is the goal, right? Is to streamline that process, make it more efficient, so our data users, particularly our scientists, can get back on the business of doing science and less time finding stuff to use for science. So looking ahead, we're actually working on starting our conversations on several of these kind of next steps. I've had some great conversations this week that I'm really excited about how that can move forward. Okay, just thinking about time. We do have a NASA webinar in the works that will be happening later at the end of August. So I encourage you, if you'd like to have that or have some more information about that, let me know. We'd love for you to be able to join us for that. And just a little shameless plug, we've got some additional sessions coming up at both AGU and AMS if you have an interest. And yeah, I'll leave it with that one. So.
Thank you, Stephanie. Bruce, any questions online? Okay. No? Any questions in the audience? Probably all heard about Casey before. We've been talking about it for a while. Back to the first one? Yeah, back to the first one, please. Great. Thank you. Super. Down here. So now that you've heard about Casey and the good work that that we've been doing with that, what I can tell you that one of the things is Casey is going to be moving to ESDIS in some form or fashion, and that those talks are underway now. What does that mean for ADMG? We're figuring all that out. Cerise Elbers, who heads the Earth Science Data Systems, is very much active in thinking about what she wants for Airborne Data Management Group in the future. What did come from setting up ADMG was that when the third round of the Earth Venture Suborbital program was funded, 5 new Earth Venture Suborbital projects in 2018, and they started getting spun up. There was a need to pull together the 4 DACs that represented the 5 EVS projects. ASDC has 2. They've got DCOTS and Activate. So one of the things that started was what we called the EVS group for a while, and we met monthly to talk about similar concerns with regards to handling airborne and field data for these 5 EVS projects. And the aim was to improve the coordination and supporting those projects among the 4 various DACs. The result was a lot better communication and collaboration than ever before. And I've worked as a DAC scientist, so I am familiar with what it was like before and how it is now. And I can say honestly that I think we're all starting to work together really well, which is changing the landscape of airborne and field data stewardship. By 2020, we changed the group name to Airborne and Field Data Working Group, and primarily because we started saying there are other DACs that have airborne and field data, we should be including them as well. So that is what we've referred to ourselves now as the Airborne and Field Data Working Group. It consists of ESDIS management, ADMG, and DAC representatives, as well as now some of the data managers for some of these projects. Gao Chen participates. He's one of the he's a data manager for several campaigns, and others. Other DACs joined, and I've got a cutoff at the bottom, I think there, but we'll continue on. Basically, it's saying that we now, I can't even read it, is
a 2-day workshop in March.
Thank you. There it is. We had our 2-day, we planned collectively a 2-day workshop in March of 2022. And that was really valuable. The goal was to, and I'm going to switch here to the next slide. What is going on? There we go. The purpose was to gather this valuable feedback from data users and data producers so that we could better serve them. And remember, it started with the 2016 survey of people saying, we can't find what we need. When ADMG spun up, we did a survey of about 60 scientists at the time to start the building of Casey and to determine what they did need if they didn't have what they needed. And that's how we designed Casey. But we really needed to hear from them some more, especially both data users and data producers, because it would feed the DACs with the information needed to do a better job at serving this community. The workshop goals were to find the ways to improve the discovery, access, and reuse, to ensure that the community needs are met. So we went in with the goal of listening, to realize the full value of airborne and field data so that we didn't just collect it and drop it, and enable open source science and determine what this means for airborne and field data communities. As the representative of the time with the EVS projects, I would get a lot of questions from the EVS leadership saying, we don't know what this means. SPD 41 had just come out. They were freaking and needed guidance. And so I was attending all of the 5 projects meetings on a regular basis at the time and was able to help assure them that they would be okay if they did a few simple changes, nothing drastic, in order to keep their projects on scope and on target. So we had this workshop. It was great. We had more than 270 people register. And the reason I report that is because during the registration process, we actually asked them questions. So we got feedback even before the workshop. We had about 50 to 100 attendees at any given time in those 2 days, with a maximum attendance that occurred on day 1, which is the day that we had data users and data producers. Day 2 had just data producers, so we expected a lower attendance on that day. The breakdown of the different kinds of users, we had people self-define themselves. And so we had approximately 40% data users and about 35% that called themselves both a data user and a data producer, and a small percentage that was just listed as a data producer. The neither is a category like Bruce here, who I think didn't pick a category. He's like management, right? So those were those in attendance. The planners of the workshop were there. Everyone who registered, everyone had to register. So we had, of course, neithers. Of the how people self-identified as far as part of their career, we wanted to make sure we were reaching not just, management and not just older scientists, but all ages. So we found we had about 20% student and postdoc. We had about 20% early career, about 35% mid-career, and 21% late career. And it's complicated as Bruce again. We got a lot of feedback over the days. We had feedback from Jamboards and poll responses and comments in the sessions and questions and various ways that we built into this workshop to gather feedback. And then we went through it line by line. We started categorizing it over the subsequent months, and we came up with 12 categories listed here. The largest categories were the information access, consistency was a big one, and improving the search and discovery of the data. So we took these 12 categories of feedback with all of their little details, and we brought that to last year's summer ESIP. And for those of you who were at that session, it was very interactive. We had buckets at the cups at the table. You see Sarah here behind noting all the types of must-haves. We took all this feedback and put it into these user stories, and then prioritized them as must-have, need, want, or not at all. And the highest priority category was then divided into the audience and the groups, and everyone went about to assess the cost and the effort required to implement the must-haves. This is a really, really valuable activity. That session helped to drive our final report. We got a lot out of that. So our final report came out in February of this year, February 2023. Yes, it took some time. There was a lot of feedback for us to go through, and figuring out how to summarize that in the best way and the most actionable way was important. We have that we released it in February. It consists of workshop summary and committee recommendations and outlines the next steps for improvement. So we don't just report what happened, we start to say, here's what we really think needs to be done. And the most important is that we suggest holding this again next year. So every 2 years, to listen to this community until we feel like we're meeting their needs better. So the top recommended actions that came out of this was to continue early DAC assignments. So EVS 3 was the first time, notice I said 3, that's the third round of EVS funding. This was the first time that the DACs were being assigned at the beginning of the project, not at the end when they're ready to hand over the data, because they're wrapping up their project. This change alone has made a significant difference in how the projects are doing, the support they feel they have, and the speed with which the data is getting published. All of this is a vast improvement, better stewardship all the way around, because the scientists are still on the project and will answer the DAC's questions.
And the cost.
And the cost to publish is much lower when you have the resources you need to get the publishing done. So that's the first part, is to continue this activity, and then to stretch it not only from the EVS projects, but into the research and analysis projects. Essential. This is an area that often goes pretty much unsupported a lot. And so getting the DACs into these projects as soon as possible. What does that require? It has required training the program managers, because they go hand out money and then they don't tell anyone who they've handed it to and when that campaign's going to happen, that someone who's on the data side who can do something about getting that team some support. So we've been trying to get ADMG awareness in their world, so that they know when they fund, they have to tell us. We work then to get it assigned to a DAC. This is vital to being really well supported data. The other thing we found as a recommendation was to create the Airborne and Field Resource Center on Earth data. This would be then that one-stop shop. ADMG has been has a web page and has been serving in some capacity to do that for several years now, but it really needed the collective effort to bring a much more effective resource center. And you'll see here we have on the wall early version of this. We want to improve campaign instrument, flight, and event information, and Casey is going a long way to doing that. We make modifications to CMR to improve search capabilities. We took an early stab at creating a suborbital portal, a version of Earth data that did it much better at serving out the data. It made a difference in Earth data itself as well. We used tags and terminology to make sure that we had things more searchable than they were before. And we improve usability and interoperability of data formats, including converting the legacy data. And that's the work Stephanie talked about. We get contacted routinely now from scientists who say, I have a closet that has a whole lot of stuff in it, and I think you want it. Or I'm about to retire. I have a box of CDs from hurricane flights in 1980s. You want this, right? So we get this kind of contact often at this point. Anytime one of us goes to a meeting, someone tends to come up and say, I've got stuff. I've got a computer I turned off 5 years ago and it's sitting in the closet. There's a bunch of data on there, right? We are getting that now. And so getting headquarters to understand what's the purpose of our data rescue? How vital is it? And I had a poster, it's down now, but I'm happy to show it to you or send it to you about the data rescue work we're doing. And it does seem like as Casey goes to ESDIS, that the data rescue work that ADMG does is going to evolve as well into some kind of data rescue department of some type that's going to address this need of the pre-digital age of NASA's data. And then we're going to address inconsistent DAC user experiences, and we do that through terminology recommendations or best practices. We put out a best practice document that at a high level started talking about what you need to do when you steward campaign data at all. So we're going to have Sarah take over at this point. Thank you for listening to me drone on, and we're going to talk about what a resource center is.
Okay. So our second. So I'm going to escape out of this for a minute. So our second top recommendation, oh no, this doesn't work. I still want to show my slides. I just don't want to be in presentation mode.
And I can type if you want while you facilitate, Sarah.
Oh, okay. Will it show on this though? If you're typing.
It should, if you're just showing the slide. Not.
But I think these are downloaded to the.
You need the other. Like that. Yeah, the other tab.
Okay.
The other tab.
Yeah. Here we go.
Sorry for the technical.
Yes.
detail.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, so I'll let you do the typing. So when you think of a resource center, what are some of the things that you think about? Anybody?
Find everything.
Where you can find everything. Okay. Anybody want to say anything specifically about what everything might mean for airborne and field data users? I don't think this is.
Everybody agrees that's all it is.
For me, I'd love to see the live locations of the aircraft.
Live locations of aircraft. Okay.
I think you have to hit the refresh button to get what I'm doing, or else you'll have to type it yourself.
Huh.
Because I've typed and it's not showing up.
I don't.
No. Oh, I can open the PowerPoint. There's PowerPoint on that. Got it. I can do that. Couldn't preview.
Okay.
All right. You'll need to type there. Sorry.
I don't think I'm in the same one.
You're not.
No.
Here, let me figure this out.
So you had to go to PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Okay, so everything would be locations of aircraft. What else?
What is the resources center? What's the proof what's the intended audience?
Airborne and field community. Yeah.
People who provide data or people who use it?
People who are looking for data, people who use data, people who provide data. All right. It's a research plan specific to the larger community. So think of someone who wants to know about airborne and field data. Here, there's a resource center. What are you going to expect to find there? How it's collected in metadata. Bruce, I saw your hand.
I'm trying to put the questions in the chat as they come in. So from chat, a place to go brainstorm about solutions to problems.
I have several thoughts.
All right, Joel.
I really like to find everything you need. I think, and again, looking at active flight lines is important and a list of campaigns. I mean, I really appreciated the little airplane diagram that showed all the different places airborne data comes from, whether it's an EVS, a RNA campaign, CalVal campaign. We understand all these things inside NASA, and I understand most of this room is NASA, but again, I really appreciate you saying, I want to just be able to go to one place to find out about all the different types of airborne campaigns that NASA is doing. So again, start with a list of campaigns, pipelines, where things are, pointing to how to access the data from historic campaigns, I think is helpful. As well as, I would say, data collection protocols. If we're looking at data providers instead of producer consultant, and say, well, I'm looking at deploying Avarice and G on the G4, I want to figure out how is the best way to process this.
Yeah, another thing that you have is kind of a matrix that works that help run this. So.
And I know a lot of people online can't quite hear us, but we're.
I'm trying to type as much as I can into the chat and you
Yeah.
can up there.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people in the room are airborne and field data. Like users, yeah, or actually looking to go to a resource center and look for the data that they need or the information that they need. Is there anyone in the room that's actually looking for that is?
Oh, yeah.
People can hear it coming from.
Yeah. Can you run that? Maybe Stephanie.
Right. Yeah, two,
Can I
right?
explain what we're doing a little bit?
So,
We're funded by NOAA under their field, to support their field campaigns, hurricane field campaign this season. And one of the things that we can't do is track the aircraft live. I'm sorry.
Okay.
One of the things that we can't do is track the aircraft live, and we're helping to coordinate the dropping of radiosonde or dropsondes with ocean observing systems. So we can get co-location and validation and verification of OBS. So if I could go to a resource center and get a KML of a specific field campaign and see the aircraft where it is at that moment, I could then put that into NOAA's using GeoCollaborate. And so I could put that in and it would superimpose the aircraft over the data, the other data that we're showing in real time.
I see Bruce's hand again.
Find out how the data have been used in the past. So again, from chat, find out how the data have been used in the past applications.
I think so I work for eventually New York State, and really excited about Casey. I've been playing with it since you were talking. It's really exciting to see that. But the big thing for us is that I am primarily, the first thing I'm looking at is geographic region and temporal extent. And for this resource center, like, I think that that's my top line item is if it's not in New York, we aren't using it.
It looks like we're showing a different,
they're on a different side.
yeah, and I don't know how we get back to the correct slide.
Just up
So I didn't,
slide 13, you're on 14.
I'm not on, it's not the same as what's on my screen.
It is on 13. You're on the
It's
right side.
So you go like this and it pops up. So then you see.
Okay,
There we go.
okay. All right, better.
Let me just.
Rama,
What's the difference between a catalog of data, the casing, for example, and the resource?
Are these two different things? Resource center versus.
Versus a catalog of data. So the resource center would also have resources. Casey tells you what data we have and provides information about that data. It doesn't tell you how to use that data. It doesn't provide Jupyter notebooks that might help you get started with that data. It doesn't connect you to help if you don't understand where you're going with that data.
I want to butt in for a second. So it provides the inventory. In other words, what
What do we
was
have?
50 years of NASA's airborne and field activities. It provides the inventory of what did happen. Many of them in historical, we don't even know where the data is at the moment. We've got a lot of lost data. So what we do have is, though, from papers and past detailed information that we found in file drawers. We have when aircraft flew, what instruments were on there. We know about past campaigns, even if we don't have the data. So it is a catalog of that, the metadata about all this past activity. It may not lead to data, so it's information.
But all that should be in case.
Should be.
That's what's in Casey.
But Casey doesn't have the kind of stuff. So you're really-
Bruce's simple answer is Casey is a piece of the
Casey is-
resource center.
Would be in the resource center.
Point. Yeah.
All right. So let's maybe give some, any last comments, Josh?
I think the resource center also needs to have an education component.
Yeah.
We're assuming that we're aware of these data, but there are so many people that have no clue that NASA does a huge amount of suborbital data.
Yeah.
And this is a great opportunity to provide that education.
Yeah, so all of these comments that we've gotten are some of the things that we heard in the workshop. And we thought, rather than listing all these individual things, we want access to Google notebooks. Jupyter notebooks. We want access to information about the campaigns. Why not create a resource center that would address all of this and provide a one-stop shop for information about NASA's airborne and field data? So we took that information and now I need to get back to the slides. Thanks so much for all your help. Okay. Now we have to go back down. And we talked to last summer's ESIP session. No, this was the winter ESIP session. Yeah. And we said, what would you want ask the same question, what would you want in an airborne field data resource center? And we broke people up into 4 groups, I believe: novice users, expert users, data providers, and then agency users. And there might have been a 5th one, but and for each group, everybody was online. So we used Jamboards, and people took the resources that we have and added them to what group where they thought they might be used, but they also could add their own post-its. So this is just an example of what that activity looked like. And here's some of what we came up with from our brainstorming then. So a place where users new to airborne data can learn how it's different from satellite data and learn a bit how to get started with it. A place to find Casey and other sources of information, including a list of campaign airborne data at each DAC, drone information, plans and schedules for upcoming campaigns. So we definitely have to work with RNA to get that. Opportunities for funding. So point them to roses. And what we learned is that different users have different needs. So we really have to think about our user types and what each type needs. And then for all types of users, frequently asked questions. So that's And then we also talked about who the users would be. So yeah, like I said, novice users, experienced data users, so people who already know how to access and use data but need advanced resources or just want to make their life a little simpler. Data producers who need information to develop high quality standardized data products, DACs who want to know up-to-date airborne and field data information, and then NASA management. So headquarters might want information for reports or for administering the grants. They might want to know what kind of data we already have, so they're not funding someone to collect the same data, or maybe to continue data. So those are types of users. And then some of the needs that the Resource Center would satisfy that were listed as absolute needs by the community is provide all the resources in one location, demonstrate data access and how to use data through Jupyter notebooks and Airborne Pathfinders, standard guidance and templates for data producers. I think Rama just talked about the DPDG in the session before here. So a little bit of Airborne tailored DPDG guidance, help with project planning, data management plans, things that we expect from our data producers, information about open science, guidance for our airborne scientists that's specific to the airborne community, scripts for data use and tools for data visualization. So these were some of our top needs that the Resource Center could satisfy. So we continued after the winter meeting to continue to just what? Oh no, I thought I took it out on my version. So the group continued to discuss and identify what we needed to have in these resource centers. And then we talked to Jennifer Brennan of the USIS communication team about how we go about making this a reality. And Jennifer's been absolutely amazing at helping us work through what this might look like, figure out how content might fit on a page in a user-friendly way, how we can come up with user workflows. So we've been developing this, and we had hoped to have it done for ESIP, but nothing ever goes as quickly as you imagine it going, right? Especially in the summer with meetings and vacations. So what we have are posters showing our what we're thinking and what it's looking like now. And we expect that the first version will be released in early fall. Now, the first version is going to be a one-page on Earth data with menus that collapse to take you to different sections and link you out to different resources. We will have in the future a more detailed website, but that is going to wait till after web unification, which we have Andy here to talk about a little bit what web unification is.
So I don't have slides for you, and I'm kind of grateful.
Yeah. But I do have a sticky note to keep me on track. So I'm Andy Thomas. I'm the web strategy and communications team manager, and I also am the project lead for the web unification project. If you do not know our team or have not met part of our team, Elizabeth Joyner is actually our community coordinator. We also have some people in the crowd. Raise your hands if you're part of the web strategy and communications team. All right, so we've got our UI UX specialist, writer, graphic designers, project coordinators, and editorial managers that all work within our team to make the Earth Data website what it is now. And then also to help design what it's going to be in the future with web unification. And so who all has heard of what web unification is? If you have not, raise your hand. All right, we got one or two. All right, so the web unification project was, you'll hear, if you go back and look at any presentation, the first thing that will pop up is the IDEA Act, and that's the Integrated Digital Experience Act of 2018, not to be confused with the Disabilities Education Act that will pop up first in Google because it ranks higher. And what it actually did was inspired NASA web modernization, which is, do I need to move over? Okay. Hi, sorry, everyone online. And so what it actually did was inspire what NASA web modernization is, and it was to modernize websites, consolidating, improving discoverability and findability and user experiences by putting like information together and in a more cohesive experience. Everyone's kind of, or we're looking toward singing the same song, having the same templates in some cases, but mostly the theme. And then listening to users and reacting and creating plans that help people find the information that they need. And so there's a little bit of the why, and although you'll see the coattails of the IDEA Act as the reason for doing it, it's actually to help users find what they need. And then as part of data sites and Earth Science Data Systems program, and what that means for us is the consolidation and unification of DAC website, Distributed Active Archive Center website, if you don't know what DAC is, and other ESDS web properties that can live cohesively in the same location, but have the input from all of the very experienced and helpful community of the Earth Science Data Systems program. So that's what we're doing. And so where is this all going to live? It will be on Earth Data, and not Earth Data what it is today, because Earth Data was created for, it was more programmatic in the beginning, but what Earth Data is to become, and that's what the integrated experience that we mentioned, or that I mentioned before, with all of the input from people like Casey, from people and impact, from people like Bruce at ORNL, from all of the ESDS people I see in the back, and getting their inputs and information on how to make Earth Data what it would be as a consolidated website. So we are, the how is by January 2024, we will start our migrations. But before that, we are gathering a ton of information from you all. We are doing content assessments. We are doing town halls with feedback opportunities. We've got resources on our Google Drive that's open to most people that wants to read about the charter, wants to look at past town halls, wants to get familiar with this project. And so, so that we can create informed decisions together. And so you will see a very different website to come January 2024. And we hope to wrap this project, we will wrap this project up by December 2025. And we're doing it with all of you. That's web unification. Any questions?
Bless you. Just a quick question on the web unification. Does that mean that, for somebody like me who supports decision makers, emergency managers, resource planners, that we would be able to go to this website and access data in web service formats, so we can pull that into our collaboration platform and share that in real time? Awesome.
We're also doing a lot of work to improve. Really bad mics, I'm so sorry. Here, okay. We're also doing a lot of work to improve our technical search engine optimization. And so we're trying to not kill what our search capabilities are now, where you go to Google and you search for something and the highest ranking thing comes up. We've hired contractors that really understand how search engines work, and getting us to rank higher with our content, so that when you, as a resource manager, need to find something, you don't need to intimately be familiar with our website. You search your keywords and you find the most relevant information. So.
Okay, so I want to talk for a minute about our vision for the full site, which will not come until after web unification, but we will have a entry page that will guide users to resources based on their needs. What are you here for? And their experience level. Each will have a flow that is tailored to that type of user. And then it will link to resources at all the DACs at ESDIS, including data, tutorials, articles, and the tools that different DACs have developed for specific types of data, and also additional NASA content such as campaign data and the Airborne program at headquarters data or information. So that's what we're envisioning. Now, what we have is our space holding site, our ideas for it. And this has always been a community endeavor since since we had the workshop, which brought the community in to suggest this, and then 2 ESIP sessions. And we want to continue getting community feedback, and that's what this activity is about. So we were going to divide you into 4 groups, and then Dave spoke, and I thought, well, we're missing a group. We're missing decision makers who use our data to make decisions, or community users who are trying to use airborne data to solve a problem. And that's why I started using airborne data long ago when I first got into remote sensing. And it actually was the data that provided the right resolution for us. So I think there's a lot of uses there. So we're going to divide you into 5 groups. And you're going to get a color of Post-it depending on which group you are. We'll have novice users will get green because they're green. Experienced users get orange Post-its. Data producers will get blue Post-its. Agency users will get pink. And then our applications decision maker users will get yellow. And you're going to go around to these posters and put your comments on the Post-its and let us know what you think, what's missing, how we could improve, what you'd like to see there.
Yes, Stephanie has pens.
There's pens, lots of Post-its.
Post-its, tapped out, just get a stack of Post-its.
Yeah.
You'll get a stack of Post-its. And you want to kind of progress around a bit, but what we've got here is like 6 pages of this site, right? So it starts with kind of where you enter, finding data. There's a title at the top. You can read the top. Using data, right? We've got over here, and it's starting to fall down apparently. We've got, I can't read that far. Learn about the data, archive data, and need help. And the remote people have this on a Jamboard. The link is there on the slide.
I don't know.
It's also in the drive, the drive for this session. There, you'll see a Jamboard there. Click that open. There are 6 pages in the Jamboard, and you take there's stickies, in a Jamboard. So grab the sticky, make it the color of the kind of user you're representing, and start putting your comments in on the Jamboard pages. What we're looking for is, do we have the right content for this kind of category that represents this section? Do we have a flow that makes sense? Are we forgetting anybody? And clearly we have probably already as decision makers. We need to definitely put that in. What is missing? Is it making sense? Are we using good words? Is there anything we should change? And I want to give a great big shout out to Jennifer Brennan and her team, who have managed to pull this off by today from ideas. So thank you.
And question.
So you want to identify who you want to represent. If
And
you're a
then
data producer, be a data producer, you know that then, right?
There's lots
So
of Post-its,
ask for
go
that
get
color.
some.
So grab a color, tell Stephanie what color you want. We'll bring some more down this side of the tables here and get you started. And we've got like 15 to 20 minutes here to start going around and leaving your comment.
It's still gonna be hard. It's gonna be doing exactly right, but. What's the deal with it? You can't just open up stuff from the drive?
Yeah, it's like, so all the stuff on the Google, like So when it's in presenter mode, it will show up here, but all the stuff on your like, on the browser is in the different, it's like in the side ones.
Oh.
The like mouse by like going over here and then it's very
Ah,
odd.
okay.
So.
We could have sorted that out
I know,
better.
I know.
We will need to come back to this. Oh, close this one up. We've got a couple final slides.
Okay, let me just make sure I close the one that is the PPT, so we don't get it. Yeah, that one.
I just wanted to say a couple of words about the posters. So the posters are meant to represent the sections of the website, not necessarily how they will how the website will visually look. Does that make sense? And so don't be concerned if you don't see imagery on some of the posters. There will be images, right? It's just, if I would have printed all of that, there'd be no room for people to kind of work on that. So you should just be evaluating, what do you think the content, like what might be missing and, what maybe shouldn't be there. Obviously, there'll be potentially tools that are missing and webinars, etc. All right, thank you.
This is fantastic. So if you can put your last thoughts on the posters and start making your way back to your seat, please. We are so excited to see all your thoughts. Good. Yeah, I just want to add, if there is a notes document in the directory for this session, if you will add your name, so we know you were here, and if you're willing to give us further feedback in the future as we develop this, if you're willing, put your email address so we can reach out to you. The next steps will be that we'll be kind of putting this together and building a draft. And then that draft could be open for suggestions and feedback before we go full public. So if you're willing to do that, please put your name and address, email address in the notes document.
Okay, so maybe let's start asking people what they.
Yeah. So what we're wondering is if anyone has any feedback for this activity, either online, we can unmute you, or if whether you are have some thoughts. I see lots of great tickets and we're really excited by that. I think the key is for us to build a resource center that meets the needs of all the different kinds of users. Does anybody have any thoughts to share?
No thoughts?
Okay. Well, thank you. It was fun. Thank you. That's good. It's always good to get up and stretch, right? We tend to sit and listen far too much. Anyone else? I see some last minute thoughts going on posters here.
Yeah, and people can continue putting thoughts up. That's fine. But we want to get you guys out of here in time for lunch, so you don't miss lunch.
In time to be the front of the line for lunch, right?
And we're just right across, conveniently located. So what we're going to do is carefully fold up these posters and take them Post-its and all back to Goddard, and where we will look at them, Jennifer and I, and incorporate your feedback into the design and content of the resource center. Once we have that down, we are going to have the DAX review, and the members of the Airborne and Field data working group And we will also send links out to those people who are interested. If you gave us your email and indicated you would like to review the final, the next draft, we will I'll let you do that. Then after some final edits, we hope to have this up in the fall. So that's the plan. And then this will be the site until web unification, and then it will be more of a multi-page interactive site after that. So that's what we got. That's our, oh, nope, we have one more slide. So if you have any if you're curious about the workshop, what went into it, how we came up with this idea, there is a webpage for the workshop on Earth Data, and the final report is available from that webpage. So any last questions, comments?
Anyone online?
Anyone online? We really appreciate everybody's feedback. It's been really great doing this as an interactive activity, the whole, like for the last year and a half, pretty much.
Yeah.
So.
And this is probably
Really
the
good.
last time you'll see us here at ESEP, because this thing will get built and then we'll move on to one of our other recommendations of
Yeah,
making things better here.
I will still have an airborne
Yeah, we'll have something airborne.
something.
Feedback session.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
That's right. So, all right, thanks
All right, well, we
everyone.
thank you all. Thanks for coming.